All right, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to use Lethal to make the additional percussion for the track. Now that we've got the foundation of the kick and the bass, these additional percussion parts are really what are going to bring out the groove in the track. So let's get started. I want to add a bit of like little claps, some sort of like side stick sounding things. So I'm going to go in here to Deep House and grab the claps here. Okay, cool, that's kind of interesting. And then what we want is sort of like, so I'm just gonna turn this down a little bit. We've got Lethal open here, so let's start playing with it a bit. With these clap sounds, I'm really not trying to kind of have that as an accent in the rhythm. So I'm just gonna pull it back so it's a little bit more muted in the mix. So I'm just pulling down the low pass filter here. So you can hear that now it's sort of, the idea is for them to be sort of grace notes into the actual snare and just things that kind of keep the rhythm moving. We're gonna add a lot more layers like this, so just something for now in the background. I think I might also stereo expand. Lethal has this nice kind of stereo expanding option where you can play with the width and the delay separately. Nice way to get a little bit more width out of these samples because a lot of them are pretty centered. I think I might also play with the envelope here to get a little bit more pop out of those sounds, so just a little bit sharper attack. I really like adding a little bit of a tonal element to some of the drums because I feel like you always want to tune your drums to your track, and when you are starting with the drums, it's nice to start with sort of like a tonal bed. The way I'm going to do this actually is I'll have a wet group so that I can control the volume of that individually, and then this will be our dry group, and then here I just want full wet on this plate thing so we can start to mess around with it. All right, so we got something kind of going on there. I'm gonna add a little bit of this ping pong delay. Pretty nice. So it's kind of a good dark mood. A lot of that is outside of the lows, and if we wanted to, we could also can just kind of pull out the lows there. So, and then let's just pull it back a bit. With this on a separate track, the corpus and the delay and that stuff, the reason I wanted to group it all like that is so that I could treat this all as one thing, so I can control the volume of all of that at the same time and have a dry wet balance. Wicked. So now we want to try to add a little bit more percussion. So I'm going to go in here to Deep House Percussion and Drums, and we'll just go to percussion and make sure you drop your swing groove on there. And basically, I'm just gonna do something like this, I think. Yeah, that's nice. Something like that, just to emphasize that clap, like that snare sound a little bit more. And then, so let's just kind of play around with it until it fits a bit more with what we've got. Kind of sounding interesting. One of the things that I really like about Lethal actually is that you've got this unison. You can put it on anything. You can even put unison on your kick drum or something if you want, and it sounds pretty interesting. So you can hear there's like this weird. That's pretty gnarly. sounds. I'm gonna take a bit of the decay off of the reverb because it's pretty long right now. Yeah, you do get a bit of sort of phasey sounding stuff if your detune's a bit too low, but I don't really want it to sound out of tune, so I'm kind of just putting it a bit in the middle there. Just pulling the level down a bit. I want this track to really feel deep and quite dark as far as the mix goes. So that's why I'm pulling a lot of the high frequencies out and making everything sound a bit muffled, because I want that earthy kind of oomph to it. All right, so the next thing we're gonna add in is just a ride cymbal. I kind of want like a offbeat hat sample, but I really like the texture of a ride, and sometimes I feel like because the ride is a longer sound, it can be really nice because when you automate it to open up that amplitude envelope, then you get this sort of building of white noise, this sort of general build-up sort of sound. Okay, cool, so that's nice. I want it to be a bit longer, but you can make it sound like a hi-hat if you just... Right, and then if we open it up all the way. This one, let's just widen it all the friggin' way. Because it's like, you know, the tops of the drums, you want them around your ears a bit, a little bit more spread out. You don't want your hi-hats or your rides or anything like right in your face in the middle, or at least I don't. So I'm gonna widen them here, and then actually I'm gonna widen them again. So what I'm doing here is basically this is called a has delay. And the concept is that like if you delay just one channel of the stereo pair by a little bit, then because those sounds are hitting your ears at different times, your ear is able to distinguish between the two speakers. So that's why it sounds wider when you do that. When they're at the same time, you get what's called the phantom image, which is in the middle between the two speakers. In Lethal, I'm doing the same thing on like I'm delaying one side and they have their own sort of stereo expanding magic inside there. And now I'm trying to do it sort of on the opposite side. So what we're doing essentially is it's already stereo expanded, and now we're just sort of like blurring the beginning of the sound, because it's almost like a micro flam sort of thing that's going on. It's really just a personal taste thing. I thought it'd be a fun trick to throw in there, and keeps your rides nice and wide sounding, so that's nice. What I'm gonna do actually is just kind of do it a little bit in the other direction. So we've got something like that. We can also... The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add a bit of reverb. This is something I like to do a lot on hi-hats. It's not really to give the feeling of space, just to add a little, like to be able to control the tails in a different way. So I like to have a lot of different ways of controlling stuff, so that when I want to build tension, I can kind of do that. I don't have to do it the same way every single time. So here, usually what I do is I take a pretty small room size. We'll cut a bit of the highs here. You can hear it's got a slightly different sound. I'm actually going to cut a bit of the highs out of here, like we've been doing with all the other sounds, just to sort of darken it in the mix a little bit. We'll fine tune this a little bit later as we go along, because right now what I want to do is move on to the other hi-hats, and then once we have those set up, then we can kind of go back here and balance everything nicely, and it'll feel better. Okay, so we've got kind of a good drum groove going. The next thing I want to do is add some closed hi-hats, just to kind of keep the ball rolling, have a little bit more motion underneath everything. Yeah, something like this will be good. I don't want all of these to be kind of full tilt here, so I'll just pull down the volume for some of them. So with this pattern, what I wanted to do with the hats is basically like the way that I kind of imagine it is like somebody just playing the hi-hat. And you know, every time you hit it, it sounds a little bit different. So I didn't want to use the same hi-hat because we're going to do some stuff to it a little bit later, so that like those things that feel like big differences now, they're gonna feel a little bit like smaller, just modulations in the same sort of hi-hat sound. So I'm not filling in all the notes because there's other sounds happening. There's other sounds that are gonna be going on in the mix. So we're really just trying to add a little bit of emphasis in different parts of the groove to keep that moving kind of feeling. There's also this really nice thing here, this white noise. Well, you can pick all the different types of noise that you want. Once you have that set up, it kind of just adds this extra sizzle to your drums. I'm not going to do a ton of that. I just wanted to kind of point it out because I think this is a really nice feature of Lethal, that you're able to add this nice subtle layer of white noise, and it's always there. It's always kind of ready to go. And then this one, I'm actually going to do a slightly different type of stereo expanding. Everybody loves stereo expanding. Basically, you take a grain delay. It's actually really similar to the has delay, except with the grain delay, you can control the granulation of the delayed channel. So you can have parts of the signal come back at different times. You can add a little bit of randomness, a bit of blur to that. And this is actually, if you were to write your own reverb plugin, this is kind of the first couple steps. Like you want to have a delay that's a little bit blurry. There's some other step there. There's a lot of other steps in there, but this is kind of where it starts, right? So just pull this down a fair bit, or quite a lot actually, and then the frequency will leave somewhere around there. And then as you bring up the spray, this just kind of brings up that stereo expanding feeling. I don't ever really get super like clinical or mathematical with any of this EQing stuff. It's really like just broad strokes. You know, you think that you're like, oh, okay, maybe I need to take a bit out of the highs, and literally all I do is just like, okay, let's try taking a bit out of the highs, and then it sounds, yeah, that about does what I want. And so I just leave it there. Like I think you can really get caught in the weeds with that stuff and just get stuck changing some really minor things. And that's really not what makes the song, in my opinion. One of the other things that I wanted to add onto here too, as sort of an option for later in the track, maybe not at this particular moment, is something that's going to be just similar to this, but whereas this is sort of someone playing a hi-hat, this other one is going to be more like a drum machine, just like just really straight. I'm going to go ahead and turn this all down right away because I know pretty much exactly what I want from this, and it's really straightforward. It's just this type of thing where we switch to 16th notes. Yeah, and then we can just kind of pick out a sample that we like with this. Something like that. That's gonna be enough. Sweet, so that's really starting to come together. Now that we've got the drums in place, the grooves locked, we can start working on the pads to really kind of bring that warm tonal touch. Click the next video for that.